Hey, it's Dr. Massive from Massive Riffs. I've got a question for you. What is the most important gain stage when you're mixing? Where is the most important knob in your mixing machine? The answer? The digital gain. The gain that you apply right after you bring your analog signal into the digital domain. That was the answer. Now let's discuss. Okay, so the digital gain stage is the stage right after, for example, when you record your guitar, right? And you've just recorded it in and you don't know what level it's going to be. You've just brought it into your DAW, right? What do you do with it? What are the considerations? Nobody ever talks about that stage, but that is one of the most important stages of your entire mix. It is definitely one of the most important stages for any stringed instrument or anything with long, non-transient tones, things like vocals or guitars. There's anything that comes from the analog realm. Once you bring it into the digital realm, you have to think about the gain right at that point. Okay, and if you mess it up there, it can have consequences for the rest of the mix from everything that you try to do afterwards. So today I wanted to talk about just some of the considerations for the digital gain stage. And again, this is the stage right after you get done recording, right? You've recorded your guitar and you've gotten it into your DAW, into your digital computer. So here is the first consideration. Okay, it is the noise. Forgive my whiteboarding. Okay, so you want to think about the noise level of your signal, and it's constantly a compromise between trying to make your signal big but not making it too big with the noise. You have to make a decision when you bring a signal in. Is there too much noise on it? Can I get rid of the noise? Maybe the noise is kind of musical. Can it be hidden in the background? But you need to realize that as you increase the gain of your signal in the digital domain, the noise is going to increase along with it. So before you do the digital gain, you may have to filter, or you may possibly want to re-record if there's severely audible noise in your track. I know it seems like a kind of a redundant or maybe a silly thing to even bring up, but there will always be noise in any analog signal that you record. So you want to make sure you bring that signal in, you want to listen for it, make sure you don't hear a lot of noise. Okay. So, and in some cases, you may actually decrease, right, or attenuate, bring the signal level lower in order to make the noise lower, right? Maybe you can shrink the signal down 3 dB and then the noise itself will become almost inaudible, right? And then you can use the track from that point. Okay, the next consideration, let's see how I do here, is going to be the low frequency content. So we got low EQ. Okay, now this is kind of a big one. Every single instrument needs to have some low frequency content. The bass guitar, obviously, the guitar, the vocals, the acoustic guitar, the horns, the keyboards, the drums will definitely have low frequency content. A lot of times, though, when you record, you are not capturing the loudest signal possible. Oftentimes you'll be using like an SM57 and maybe it's a little bit off angle on your guitar amp and you end up with a really small signal. Before you mix that really small signal with, a big gigantic drum signal or a bass guitar signal, you want to make sure that that tiny signal gets bigger. You want to make it about the same size as all of the other uh, tracks that are going to be mixed together later on by your mixing program. So if you take a signal and you increase its amplitude, if you apply gain to it, all of the frequencies of that signal are going to expand. However, the low frequencies will often start to overpower or kind of balance out with the higher frequencies as the signal gets bigger. Okay, so a huge part of the digital gain stage is thinking about the low frequency content. You have to make the signal big enough so it can carry the low frequency content and so that it can mix alongside of your drums and your bass guitar and all your other instruments, which will have their own low frequency content. The reason you want to do this is when the instrument has its low frequency content going into the mix, that low frequency content will stay. It will help that instrument to sound like itself. It will help the instrument to avoid losing all of its frequency content once it gets mixed. The mixing process is very, very destructive to audio tracks. You really need to have audio files, audio signals with about the same frequency levels, especially at the lower frequencies, right? So that one audio track does not destroy the frequency content of another audio track. Okay. So in this situation, usually you are increasing the gain. You're blowing the signal up, making it bigger in order to bring out more low frequency. And you want that signal sitting there big and massive and full of low frequency before you start to move the faders around and start to mix it, right? You want to start with a nice, full, thick, low frequency sound for every single instrument that's going to be mixed together. Okay, the final consideration for the digital gain stage is, let's see if I can do it, okay, is going to be plug-in, okay, input. Okay, all of these signals are going to go into a plug-in at some point, most likely on your bus. So you record a guitar track, it goes into your guitar bus, and then it will then go into a plugin. What you want to make sure is that the level of your signal going into the plugin is at the sweet spot for what the plugin wants to see. Every plugin wants to see signals at different levels, right? They will have profiles that change depending on the levels of the signals that go into them. Oftentimes, back in the old school days, the old analog gear, it would be 7. 7 was the magic number. You turn the knob about 7, a little bit past halfway, to give you that sweet spot of whatever audio gear you were using. That was kind of the unwritten rule, right? You don't need to blast it, but you want to give it a little bit of crank, a little bit of juice, so you around 7. I don't know if that's true anymore, and it's kind of plug-in dependent. It's kind of experimentation dependent and what you want, but you should definitely be considering what is the plugin that my audio file is going to go into, right? At the very next step, and make sure that I am setting it at a good amplitude for that plugin. Now, the interesting part is these three factors are not always going to lead to the same result. So sometimes there'll be a trade-off where you want low frequency content, you need to make the signal bigger. But that may also make your noise bigger. So you have to make a choice. Can I live with the noise, or do I go back and re-record and try to get no noise, or do I try to filter out the noise right before applying the digital gain stage? It's tough, but all I can tell you is the end goal is that all of your tracks have approximately the same level of low or lower mid frequency content. Okay, now obviously, your bass and your kick drum are going to have some extra sub frequencies, right? So the lowest frequencies, no, but your lower mid, right? And maybe we can put that low mid, right? Let's put M I D here. Okay, so the low mid frequencies are really going to be what help your guitar to sound like an awesome guitar once it's in the song, once it's in the mix, right? Super important. And then also, while looking at your noise and your low frequencies, you want to also consider the level that your plugin wants to see. And again, this is going to be some experimentation and just getting to know your the various plugins that you're using. So that's pretty much all I had. Maybe Rick, Beato, if you're out there, or Spectre Studio, guys, pick up on this topic and let's get a video on this, because this is important and it is one of the most overlooked discussions. Anytime I see a studio or a mixing video or somebody talking about how to get that killer sound, it's all in the levels. Oh my goodness, it is all in the levels. So that's all we had for this week. Thank you so much. Everybody stay healthy, and remember, be massive.